When you hear the term bizarre murder, what do you imagine? Is murder just that? Of course, it's an inhumane and unethical act. However, most motives stem from human emotions, such as grudges, tangled relationships, arguments that escalate, or financial troubles. But among them, there are cases with motives that are far beyond what most people could ever imagine. Murders with incomprehensible methods or motives are called bizarre murders. This time, I will introduce a case involving a person who committed murder for an unbelievably selfish reason. The Kuzuryuko freezer murder case 20. On May 21, 2012, a skeletonized body was discovered in Kuzuryuko, Fukui Prefecture. A woman's body was discovered. DNA analysis revealed that the body belonged to someone who had been missing for about half a year. It was identified as Ms. M, who was 27 years old at the time and had been missing. On October 26 that year, Detective Hayashi, 40, and Tomoyuki Watanabe, 36, were arrested for allegedly abandoning a body in the prefecture. These two were frequent customers at the snack bar where Ms. M worked. Following the trial, Hayashi, the defendant, received a life sentence for murder. Defendant Watanabe was sentenced to 14 years in prison for murder and fraud, but Hayashi was only charged with murder. The defendant received life imprisonment and faces fraud charges as an accomplice. Why did Watanabe get 14 years in prison? Is it because defendant Watanabe received a lighter sentence than defendant Hayashi? The reason is that defendant Hayashi was the ringleader in this case, and it is said that this arrest led to the discovery of another brutal incident. Why did this incident happen in the first place? And what is that other brutal incident? Now, here are the details of the case. On November 23, 2011, after her cabaret club shift in Ichinomiya City, Aichi Prefecture, Ms. M returned to the apartment she shared with her partner. She told her boyfriend that she was at a customer's apartment. When they checked, the car's registration certificate was missing. The vehicle identification number had been carefully scraped off. The car navigation system and license plates had been removed, and even the bumper had been replaced with a different one. Scraping off the vehicle identification number requires special tools and expertise. It's expected that the person who did this to Mr. M's car is someone who is very knowledgeable about cars. Due to this strange situation, it was determined that Mr. M was involved in an incident. The police immediately began their investigation. However, there was still no trace of Mr. M after that. A message from Mr. M's phone told a close friend, "I'll be back on December 5th. However, the friend who received this message felt something was off. That's because whenever Mr. M sends a message, he usually decorates it cutely. The message sent then was plain text only, making it hard to believe he wrote it himself. Also, his partner and close friends called his cell phone. Although the calls went through, there was only silence on the other end. M-san's family and partner also believed that M-san didn't disappear of his own will, but that something was wrong, so they filed a missing person report. They continued searching desperately after that, but unfortunately, they were unable to find him. 2011 came to an end. And then in the following year, 2012, there was major progress in this case. On May 21st, a worker collecting driftwood at Kuzuryuko found something that had been left there. Inside the freezer, there was a skeletonized body. They quickly notified the police, who conducted an examination. As a result, it was determined that the body belonged to Mr. M, who had been missing. The body was clothed. There were no clothes and only accessories were worn. That's right. What Mr. M was put into was a commercial freezer weighing about 100 kilograms, which is impossible for one person to move alone. That's how it was. Police suspected multiple perpetrators and launched a new investigation. During the inquiry, they discovered something. They discovered that a freezer of the same model had been purchased through an online auction. And furthermore, they found out that the buyer was a regular customer at Mr. M's shop. And then, on October 26th of the same year, he started running an automobile sales business. Suspect Hayashi and truck driver suspect Watanabe were arrested in this prefecture on suspicion of abandoning a body. These two originally worked at the same company as colleagues. They hit it off there and developed a friendship. He began visiting the cabaret club where Ms. M worked. Ms. M was popular and had many regulars. That's right. Of the two suspects, Hayashi in particular was really into Ms. M. and at times he would go to the club about 10 times a month. And then, after the suspects were arrested, the motive and the background started to become clear. That was when Ms. M married her live-in boyfriend at the end of 2011. It was planned. She had also told Hayashi, the suspect, about it. This was revealed by her co-workers. At the time of their arrest, both of them denied the charges and insisted that they knew nothing about it. Watanabe eventually admitted to the charges and confessed to abandoning Ms. M's body. It was strictly a staff and customer relationship, Ms. M and the two suspects. However, Hayashi, the suspect, started to think this way. Even after spending so much on her, she won't date me. Ultimately, I can't forgive her for marrying someone else. Furthermore, Hayashi, the suspect, was different from Ms. M. Ms. M interfered with him dating the staff member. He misunderstood, got enraged, and this incident occurred. The statement revealed that the main perpetrator is the defendant, Hayashi. The defendant, Watanabe, said that he was asked for help by the defendant, Hayashi, and as a result, he couldn't refuse and lent a hand. But Mr. M was working there. The store clerk said that the relationship between these two was like Hayashi being the guru and Watanabe being the follower. Additionally, the two admitted to abandoning the body. After that, Hayashi even confessed how he killed Ms. M. He strangled Ms. M with a rope to kill her. After that, he dismembered her with an electric saw. At this point, it's already a horrifyingly brutal murder. But even more shocking facts come to light from here. That was when the accomplice, defendant Watanabe, made an unbelievable confession. That was based on defendant Watanabe's testimony, who also admitted to disposing of another woman's body. The police searched the mountains of Inuyama City, Aichi Prefecture, and what they found was 200. She had been missing since 2009. She lived in Komaki City, Aichi Prefecture. They were the skeletal remains of 26-year-old Ms. A. It was also found that defendant Watanabe, defendant Hayashi, and Ms. A were former lovers. And then they began to talk about how distorted their relationship was while they were dating. The story goes back to 2004. Defendant Hayashi and Ms. A started dating, but even though they began their relationship, defendant Hayashi did not treat Ms. A as an important girlfriend. There was never a time before or after that when he treated her well. He cheated on Ms. A. He would often lash out, saying, "Give me back the time I spent on you," and frequently acted violently. He even accused her of cheating, even though she hadn't done anything. He demanded a large sum from her as compensation. He forced Ms. A to work at hostess clubs and in the sex industry, and Lynn took all the money she earned. At this time, Ms. A met a man at her workplace. The man began to develop feelings for Ms. A, but when Lynn found out about this, he made Ms. A contact the man and lie, saying she was hospitalized and needed money. In order to get him to send money, he made the man send several million yen in support. Ms. A says Lynn only saw her as a tool to make money. Not only that, but if things didn't go Lynn's way, he would lecture Ms. A for up to 10 hours, and sometimes he would use violence against her until she collapsed. He even hit her with a replica sword. These acts became a daily occurrence, and Ms. A gradually fell into a state of brainwashing. Mr. Watanabe witnessed this situation up close, and he says that this is when he began to feel fear toward Mr. Hayashi. Eventually, Mr. Hayashi confined Ms. A. She was made to earn money by talking to men for a fee through live chat. But Ms. A's situation never improved. She couldn't eat or use the bathroom without Mr. Hayashi's permission. In such an extreme situation, while that condition continued, Mr. Hayashi instructed Ms. A to stand and wrapped a chain around her neck. When Ms. A tried to lie down, the chain was too short and tightened around her neck. Ms. A was left in that state and eventually suffocated and passed away. And what's even more shocking is that it was discovered that the period when defendant Hayashi started frequenting Ms. M's shop overlapped with the time Ms. A was being confined. In other words, defendant Hayashi was using the money Ms. A earned to go to Ms. M's shop. Because of these repeated cruel actions, defendant Watanabe developed a strong sense of fear toward defendant Hayashi. Consequently, she became fully obedient to defendant Hayashi. Regarding the disposal of Ms. M's body, she repeatedly stated that she didn't really want to do it, and that she did not actively cooperate. When the recess was announced, defendant Watanabe left the following words: "I'm glad I was arrested, It's better than just obeying Hayashi. I will never forget that woman. This was a cruel crime that treated people as less than human. In this case, it's likely that Hayashi had no sense of guilt. Even when he killed Ms. A, he was probably only thinking about how he could keep it hidden. The reason he confined Ms. A was also because she was a source of money, so he made sure she couldn't escape. It can also be assumed that he did this to avoid being found out for making money by using Ms. A for his own selfish desires. He didn't care what happened to anyone else. That mindset is clear here, and it's completely unforgivable. Such incidents must never happen again. I sincerely pray for the souls of the two young women in their 20s who still had a future ahead of them, but left this world too soon. Well then, that's all for today. Thank you very much for watching. Mr. Takanori Hashimoto, nicknamed Hashi, was a professional shogi player active until 2021, known for his blonde hair, suit, and facing the camera during matches. He would perform or do interviews. He also did impressions of famous shogi players, bringing a fresh perspective to the conservative shogi community. He defied convention and was a maverick in the shogi community, entertaining his viewers. That kind of person did something unbelievable in July 2023. He was exposed to the public by the news. The attempted murder case of the former professional shogi player happened around 7 a.m. on July 20, 2023. Mr. Hashimoto headed to his ex-wife's home in Otsu City, Shiga Prefecture, and then he broke in through the window with a hoe about 12 centimeters long in one hand. And once inside the house, they ran into each other. After fighting his ex-wife's father, he also attacked his ex-wife when she ran in after hearing her father's screams. He pursued his ex-wife holding a hoe. Hashimoto managed to escape while her father was resisting. The ex-wife called the police. Her father took the hoe from Hashimoto, raised it, and restrained him. Responding to the call, the police rushed to the scene. Hashimoto was arrested on the spot by the officers. In another room was their 4-year-old son, but the boy was unharmed. There were no fatalities, and fortunately, both his ex-wife and father who were attacked only suffered minor injuries. But why? Why did Hashimoto decide to resort to violence, and what was his motive? Before we get into the details of this case, let's first talk about what kind of person Hashimoto was. Hashimoto started playing shogi when he was in the 3rd grade of elementary school, and by the time he reached 6th grade, he had joined the apprentice school. At 18, he was promoted to 4dan and fulfilled his dream of becoming a professional. In 2004, at age 21, he appeared with bleached blonde permed hair. The match became a hot topic. His unique look was eye-catching, and during the match, he'd make guts poses and glance at the camera. Due to his actions and comments, people said he was overly aware of the camera. As a professional shogi player, he also started to be featured on variety shows. No one like him had been in the Players Association before. His unique personality drew all the attention. But actually, his shogi skills were also quite impressive. In 2012, when he was 29 years old, he was promoted to 8 dan. Only 10 top shogi players have ever reached Class Q, and he has been promoted to that level. He gained popularity and public attention for his personality. As for Hashimoto, in 2021, he suddenly announced his retirement due to personal reasons. He appeared on variety shows and worked as a model. His activities were not limited to shogi. He was active in a wide range of fields. However, around 2019, he began to show signs of mental instability. In the background, there were troubles with his ex-wife. July 18, 2019. After the match, Mr. Hashimoto returned home in Shiga Prefecture. Despite repeatedly calling "I'm home," he felt something was off in the silent house. He found something left on the desk. It was a note from his wife. "I can't live with you anymore. I can't live with you anymore." Actually, a couple of days earlier, we had an argument on LINE, and I thought that was the reason. He visited his wife's parents to talk and reconcile, but the discussion went poorly. He was turned away at the door and they wouldn't even listen to him. And after that, he received a notice from his wife's lawyer requesting a divorce, along with a bill for alimony and child support. After that, the couple's issues moved from divorce mediation to a court trial. Mr. Hashimoto claimed custody of his son, but his request was not granted. This incident made him realize that in this country, the parent who takes the child away has the advantage. The system is set up so that even if the parent whose child was taken away asks for their child back, they are not even allowed visitation, as changing the environment is considered harmful to the child. He began to question not only his anger toward his wife, but also Japanese law itself. In October 2020, the Japan Shogi Association officially announced Mr. Hashimoto's leave from official matches. Initially, it was attributed to personal reasons, but he later revealed on his YouTube channel and in the media that he had been separated from his son. He was unable to watch his son grow up and was mentally cornered by having to endure life alone during the COVID-19 pandemic. He developed physical illnesses and depression, saying he was unfit to play shogi. Separated from his son and missing those important years, he watched others appear happy from the outside. Every time he saw families outside, he felt his own heart being worn down. He had no choice but to put an end to his shogi career himself. There were no problems at home. His wife left on her own. He expressed his despair and anger, but insisted there were no problems in his marriage. He also said that while he was at home, he actively helped with putting his son to bed and giving him baths. On the other hand, while he expressed despair and anger, he stated that there were no problems in his married life. But he says he has absolutely no memory of anything like that. In April 2021, Mr. Hashimoto submitted his retirement notice to the Japan Shogi Association, which was accepted on April 20th. That same day, he launched a YouTube channel, started a Twitter account, and announced his wife had left with their newborn son to live separately without his permission. He revealed to the public that he considered this to be child abduction, and that he was thinking about starting activities to make parental child abduction illegal. After that, on his channel, he posted videos almost daily, sharing his opinions on the issue of child abduction and joint custody after divorce. Because he was already well known, he was frequently invited to gatherings and demonstrations supporting joint custody. As a result, he was supported by people who had similar experiences. However, in the end, that too was only temporary. Mr. Hashimoto, who was released from the Knights Association. In the video, he used harsh language and made extreme, excessive remarks. Also, on Twitter, he called his ex-wife a kidnapper and said she dragged him down to the depths of hell. He called her a murderer, pointed out YouTube comments, and began making posts that seemed threatening, such as saying he'd commit mass murder and suicide. His violent behavior became increasingly apparent. In interviews with the media at the time, he said he had never been violent toward his wife or cheated on her. The judge ignored the circumstances leading to their separation. There's a preconceived notion that single mothers are to be pitied. He also made statements criticizing his ex-wife and the judge. That was Mr. Hashimoto. But in December 2022, the judiciary finally stepped in. He was arrested on suspicion of defamation for posting slanderous comments about his ex-wife on social media. However, he denied the charges, saying he had no memory of posting such things. On his Twitter, when his own videos were deleted, he blamed his mother-in-law for it and claimed that she was completely removing him from his son's life. He said things like, "A person like this doesn't deserve to be a mother." He said, "It was you, Zero, my mother-in-law, who worked behind the scenes, deceived me, ruined me, and sent me to hell," accompanied by a tweet stating, "I will never forgive you for taking my posts, job, and child." He posted photos of his ex-wife. He said, "I will reveal the names of the murderers who kidnapped my son and destroyed me," and actually posted the names of his ex-wife and her parents. He then posted the opposing lawyers' real names and addresses. There were also posts that could lead to the leakage of personal information. And then the year changed. On January 17th, 2023, he was rearrested on suspicion of defamation. He was indicted for defamation due to slander against his ex-wife and her associates. In June 2023, from the Otsu District Court, I revealed the name of the person who slandered and defamed me. I exposed the name of the person who tried to ruin me. the infamous person who tried to destroy me. I exposed the name of the murderer who tried to ruin me. With my child, I am my child. All the records and circumstances are only from Hashimoto's point of view, and at first glance, it seems sudden. She was separated from her son, accused of things she didn't recall, and asked for a divorce and compensation she didn't understand. Some people may see her as someone trying to fight against the unreasonable laws of the country. However, when it comes to family problems, I think there are many things that only the people involved can truly understand. And above all, as for the voices around them, it's also a fact that many people have said they're not surprised that Hashimoto is suspected of committing a crime. Is that because of the mental illness that Hashimoto was suffering from, or is it due to his inherent nature? The trial regarding the attempted murder case will proceed from here on. It is expected that a prison sentence of 1 year and 6 months for defamation, along with the charge of attempted murder in this case, will result in a prison sentence for Hashimoto. However, on August 3rd, Otsu District Court actually began a psychiatric evaluation to determine Hashimoto's criminal responsibility and other factors. That period lasts until December 4th. In other words, it will be until December 4th. They will be determining whether Mr. Hashimoto has criminal responsibility or not. They are still continuing to investigate this matter. I would like to continue to keep a close eye on suspect Hashimoto. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. In recent years, as DNA testing technology has improved, there have been more cases where previously unsolved incidents have been resolved. Due to DNA matches, there have been 5 cases where past incidents have moved toward resolution. And in all of these cases, the suspect was arrested more than 10 years after the incident occurred. And then, in October 2021, thanks to advancements in DNA analysis technology, another previously unsolved case was resolved. There was major progress in a murder case after 20 years. The case that was finally resolved after a long time was the 2000 murder of a housewife in Mayu, Fukuyama City, Hiroshima Prefecture. On February 6, 2001, a mother of 2 was found dead in Fukuyama City, Hiroshima. Adhesive tape was placed over her mouth, and a fruit knife was stabbed into her left side. Nearby, a 9-month-old baby girl was standing. Fortunately, the baby girl was not harmed, but the police determined that this case was a murder and proceeded with the investigation. A number of pieces of evidence believed to belong to the perpetrator were left at the scene. People expected the perpetrator to be caught quickly, but a year, 5 years, even 10 years went by. The police continued their diligent investigation, but the perpetrator was never caught, and in the end, 20 years passed. In other words, it's now 2021. The police investigation seemed to be completely at a standstill, and it appeared hopeless that the perpetrator would ever be found. That's how it was. Then the time came. On October 25, 2021, this case would take a sudden turn. The suspect was finally arrested. The key to the arrest was that the DNA of a person arrested for a separate case was left at the scene of this case. It was that the DNA matched. Now, here are the details of the case. On the day of the incident, February 6, 2001, the victim's family was spending their morning as usual. They finished breakfast. When it was time for school, the 6-year-old eldest son went to elementary school. Mr. A, who would later become the victim, took care of his 9-month-old daughter, soothed her, and finished cleaning up after breakfast. At about 11 a.m., her husband, who operates a pachinko parlor, left for work shortly after she saw him off. While relaxing at home with her eldest daughter, the doorbell at Mr. A's house rang. It was a delivery. Mr. A took his seal and headed to the entrance. And without any suspicion, Mr. A opened the door. However, but instead of a delivery worker, the person at the door was the criminal behind the coming tragedy. As soon as the door opened, the criminal pushed Mr. A aside and entered wearing his shoes. Mr. A immediately sensed danger, dropped the seal he was holding, and ran away to protect himself and his eldest daughter. The security system at Mr. A's house activated, prompting the security company to call 110 after noticing an issue. At 12:45, the criminal closed in on Mr. A as he tried to escape, and then he struck Mr. A with the blunt object he was holding. Mr. A, whose consciousness was fading, had his mouth sealed with adhesive tape. Did the criminal think that if he didn't kill him, he would be caught himself? The criminal attacked Mr. A with a knife, but Mr. A resisted fiercely, injuring the criminal and causing him to bleed. The blood soaked into the criminal's socks. Mr. A desperately resisted, but the criminal stabbed Mr. A in the left side of his abdomen with the knife. After being struck on the head and losing consciousness with the knife still stuck in him, Mr. A still tried to escape somehow. He crawled up the stairs to the assembly hall, trying to distance himself from the criminal, but even with his desperate attempt to escape, he collapsed near the middle of the stairs, sitting down as his last strength gave out. After killing Mr. A, the criminal did not search the room or anything like that, and when the police arrived, at the time, 9-month-old Joe was found unharmed, but Mr. A had already passed away. The police, from Mr. A who was found, they determined that this was a murder case and immediately conducted an investigation at the scene. Then, inside the house, what was left behind? They found footprints from Korean-made sneakers and socks stained with the perpetrator's blood, injured during Mr. A's resistance. From the footprints, police continued the investigation, suspecting a large man, and sent the leftover socks for forensic analysis. They examined the knife used to stab Mr. A and found the weapons included a knife, peeler, and kitchen scissors. They also found that it was a gift set. Since DNA was obtained from a specific sock, it was believed that the case would be solved soon, and the investigation continued. However, the case was never solved, and about 20 years passed during that time. The police deployed about 180,000 investigators, and the number of tips received exceeded 1.62 million. Why? Despite all the evidence left behind in this case, why was the perpetrator never identified? The main reason for that is, one reason is that the accuracy of DNA testing at the time was not as high as it is now, so the investigation was put on hold. Another factor is that DNA testing could not be performed on the blood found on the socks. Also, the sneakers that matched the footprints were mass-produced, which made it difficult to identify the culprit. Although the investigation continued, they couldn't get closer to the culprit. In 2010, 9 years after the incident, police held a memorial for Mr. A and renewed their determination to catch the perpetrator. Still, time kept passing. The investigators were ready for the case to become a cold case. That's right. However, in the spring of 2021, there was a sudden development. Unbelievably. At this time, the DNA testing system in Japan improved, and they succeeded in identifying the DNA left on the sock as evidence. Because of this, the police went around Fukuyama City again and asked residents to voluntarily submit their DNA. At the same time, a man in Fukuyama City was arrested for violating the firearms and swords control law. Kuzo Takamori, after being arrested, had his DNA tested, and incredibly, it was discovered that this person's DNA was a perfect match with the blood DNA left on the sock, which was evidence in this case. After 20 years, DNA testing technology improved, and just as DNA was identified from the remaining evidence, there was another case. The match from the arrest was truly the end of a long journey. And so, the miraculous arrest of the suspect took place. And this suspect, Takamori, was actually from a town about 10 minutes by car from the crime scene at Myodai. He continued to live in the same city, unemployed and receiving welfare assistance. He hadn't appeared on the police's radar during the investigation. In early October 2021, the police collected samples in the spring. They compared Takamori's DNA to evidence from the scene and found it matched the bloodstain on the sock. As I mentioned earlier, the results matched. Based on the DNA test results from October 25, the police requested Takamori, the suspect, to voluntarily accompany them. He was taken to Fukuyama West Police Station, where they questioned and investigated him. Takamori, the suspect, told police he had no memory of it and agreed to go with them. The police used the DNA match as evidence and filed charges against Takamori on October 27. They continued investigating to obtain his confession. On November 12, 2021, Takamori, 67, went to the scene and stabbed the woman in the abdomen. It was learned from interviews with investigators that he stated he did not intend to kill her. Takamori, the suspect, said he had no acquaintance with the woman and explained that he thought she might have money. He also said that he entered the woman's house pretending to be a delivery man. That's right. He also brought the knife used in the crime with him, disguising himself as a delivery worker. He covered her mouth with adhesive tape and used a knife, which also suggests that this incident was premeditated. Local residents reported that Takamori, the suspect, was seen asking an acquaintance for a loan at the time. That's right. Mr. A's husband ran a pachinko parlor and had debt from pachinko in Fukuyama City at the time. People were saying that he might be the culprit. He lost a lot of money at pachinko, and out of resentment, he targeted Mr. A's family. Whether suspect Takamori was playing pachinko at that time is unknown. Since there was no prior acquaintance with the victim, this is thought to have been a robbery murder for financial gain, not revenge. Actually, Takamori, the suspect, had to close down the landscaping business he was running in 2001. After his company went bankrupt, he faced hardship and financial struggles. In the end, he crossed a line that should never be crossed. So far, only his financial motive has been disclosed. I was the victim. I sincerely pray for Mr. A's soul to rest in peace. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. Most stalkers are driven by romantic feelings, often due to misunderstandings between the individuals involved. Most stalkers, regardless of gender, are said to be very possessive and have dependent personalities. Even when they act selfishly and unreasonably, they firmly believe that what they're doing isn't wrong and never doubt themselves. Two people who met on a dating site. As their relationship grew complicated, one became obsessed, and soon it involved more than just the two of them. This case involves the murder of a family member. The Nagasaki Stalker Murder Case 20. In September 2010, Ms. Ko lived alone in an apartment in Nara City, Chiba Prefecture. At the time, 23 years old, she was looking to meet people and used an online membership-based social networking site. She met a man named Tsutsui Gota, who was 27 years old at the time. The two got along well and started contacting each other frequently. Their relationship soon deepened and became romantic. About a year and a half later, in May 2011, the two continued their relationship smoothly in the city of Nara. They ended up starting to live together at Miss A's apartment, but soon after they began living together, she started to sense something was wrong. He started acting like a completely different person, monitoring her actions and checking her emails every few hours. She needed his permission to contact family or friends and was only allowed 10-15 minutes at work. She had to regularly update her actions by email or phone for about 2 months. In late June, something happened that made their relationship even worse. It started when she was late contacting him or coming home, and that's when his violence began. Around this time, she began skipping work without permission and was absent more often. However, her family quickly noticed these changes in her, and then the nature of their relationship. That is, they discovered she was being controlled and abused by him. After learning about this, her family immediately went to the police and started taking action to save her. Then, about 4 months later, on October 30th, her family, together with the police and others, rescued her from him. Successfully, Shoin made him write a pledge promising never to approach her again before letting him go. After that, she returned to her family home in Nagasaki Prefecture, and it seemed as if she was finally freed from his control. However, he had not given up. He kept sending threatening emails to her family and friends. About a month later, in December, he crossed the line by sending threatening emails even to her family and friends. She and her father responded to his actions. The two of them went to the police about his stalking behavior. They consulted the police to file a report about stalking and obstruction. Unfortunately, the police responded only after the incident. They were told it wasn't their jurisdiction and to consult the Chiba Prefectural Police, not the Nagasaki Prefectural Police. I was shocked by such a response, but soon after, I called the Narashino police station in Chiba Prefecture, but their response was also, they told me to consult the police station where the perpetrator is, meaning you can't consult them if you don't know his location. Still, the two didn't give up and went to his parents' house. They also contacted the Kuwana police station in Mie Prefecture, which said they'd check with the two places we'd already consulted. But after that, there was no further progress. Frustrated by the police station's response, the two finally went to Chiba Prefecture about a week later on December 6th and headed to the police station in Nara City. And finally, they ended up consulting directly. The police station said no one in criminal affairs was available and told them to wait a week. When calls went unanswered, they visited in person. But the only answer they got was to wait a week. And later, they found out the reason for this week-long wait was, unbelievably, a company trip for leisure. From December 8th to 10th, including the section chief who told the two to wait, it was discovered that 12 people had gone on a trip to Hokkaido. And then, our prefecture developed in the worst possible direction. On the 14th, he left his girlfriend and moved back to his family home in my prefecture. So, it's not that he gave up on her. He became convinced her family had forcibly taken her home, feeling resentment and anger toward them. That anger may have shifted elsewhere. He argued with his father over something trivial and ended up hitting him. His father immediately called the police, but taking advantage of a brief moment, he managed to escape. After that, he asked his father not to file a police report against him, but his father refused, and he was abandoned by his parents. Now, she was all he had left. He felt everything had separated them. He secretly harbored the thought that he had no choice but to kill her entire family. He headed to her family home in Nagasaki Prefecture. On December 16th, he arrived at her house. He suddenly broke the window glass and immediately entered the house. He found her 77-year-old grandmother and 56-year-old mother. He suddenly attacked the two with the kitchen knife he had, and then, in the heat of the moment, killed them on the premises. He hid the bodies in the van and fled. The returning family members found the two bodies at home and reported it to the police. When asked if she had any idea who the culprit was, she immediately suspected him and told the police. Then, on the following day, the 17th, the police took him into custody and urgently arrested him on suspicion of murder and trespassing. About a year and a half later, on June 14th, 2013, a lay judge trial for this case was held at the Nagasaki District Court. During the investigation, he was questioned about this case. Although he had admitted to the series of crimes, once the trial began, he claimed that he had not broken into his girlfriend's family home and had not killed the two people. He also claimed that he did not send any threatening emails and did not use violence against his girlfriend, insisting on complete innocence for all charges. And furthermore, he showed an attitude of disputing his criminal responsibility by claiming there was suspicion of mental confusion. However, in response to this, the Nagasaki District Court found no proof of improper interrogation. The content of his statements was vivid and included the disclosure of secrets. They accepted his voluntary, credible confession and, citing DNA evidence, concluded he was the perpetrator. Regarding criminal responsibility, the court also found that the crime was premeditated and that he was responsible in line with the prosecution's request. Tsutsui, the defendant, was sentenced to death. In response, the defense immediately filed an appeal. At the second high court trial, physical evidence like DNA confirmed the defendant's involvement, so the same death sentence as the first trial was given. The defense appealed, dissatisfied with the outcome. The case eventually reached the Supreme Court, and the day arrived, July 21, 2016. The Supreme Court decided to dismiss this appeal, and in the end, the final desperate attempt was in vain. The death sentence for defendant Tsutsui was finalized. This case concerns defendant Tsutsui's actions toward his girlfriend. It escalated from persistent following to stalking, and eventually led to a murder case. However, I believe this case is one that could have been prevented. The worst outcome occurred before the police could take action. And there's one more thing. It's about Tsutsui's past. In fact, since childhood, he had bitten other children and acted violently. He was said to have a highly dependent and impulsive personality. In fact, this case, he had previously been arrested for stalking another woman. Tsutsui had a criminal record. This was, of course, something the police could have known. It's fair to say he was someone they should have paid close attention to. In fact, he even wrote a pledge promising never to go near her again. Why did police still not act properly after repeated reports from the victim about this person? Why didn't they take action? It's truly regrettable. The police often can't act until something actually happens. This is the current reality. I can only hope that we learn from this case and never repeat the same mistake again. And the encounter that led to this incident, it all starts from places where you can't see who the other person really is, such as large websites. I believe everyone should be aware of the dangers in human relationships. I would like to express my heartfelt condolences to those who lost their lives in this case. That's all for today. Thank you for watching. A love triangle with 3 men and women in a romantic relationship is endearing. Struggles over a partner are common themes in dramas and movies. It's often brought up and feels like something that only happens in stories. But those who actually get caught up in it experience a pain that feels like they're being torn apart. Some people might even feel this way. I want to kill the other person. What we're introducing this time is the result of such a love triangle escalating. There are rumors that a woman has gone missing. This is an incident. The disappearance of Fukuoka Fuku woman. Around 1:10 p.m. on February 19, 1994 in Haramachi City, Fukushima Prefecture. Ms. Hitomi Mashiyama worked as a dental assistant and office clerk at a dental clinic. She was 21 years old at the time and was scheduled to get married in 3 weeks. This was her last day at work. Wishing you happiness. Her colleagues smiled and gave her flowers with kind words. She left work smiling, but then disappeared, and her whereabouts became unknown. The next day, on the 20th, her black Suzuki Alto Works was found abandoned behind a convenience store near her workplace. The car was locked. All of her belongings, such as her jacket, wallet, and bag, were left inside the car. Inside the bag was the engagement ring he had given her. She was about to see her ex-fiancé. She was meant to build a happy family with Sato, just them both. Her relationships with others seemed good, so it was hard to believe she would run away from home on her own. The police believed she might have been involved in some kind of incident. They proceeded with the investigation, considering both the possibility of her running away and a crime. She had a slender figure, charming dimples, and was popular for her cheerful personality as a volleyball club member in her student days. Why would someone like her disappear right before wearing a wedding dress? To understand that, we need to think about it carefully. We need to know about the series of strange events that had been happening to her even before her disappearance. Actually, ever since she got engaged, her house had been getting silent phone calls almost every night. It's believed that this was most likely harassment targeting her. The reason is that the silent phone calls stopped completely from the day she disappeared. After that, the calls stopped coming completely. Besides that, she had also been having her car scratched and slanderous graffiti written on it for some time. She had asked acquaintances about being bothered by these pranks. The next day, when the car was found, it was discovered that there was still graffiti on the body of the car meant to defame her. Also, her relationship with her former fiancé could hardly be described as smooth sailing. That's correct. She kept a diary. Her notebook had an entry from January 25th that said this: "Did Mr. Dishok call me at lunch? Apparently, he still hadn't ended things with another woman. But I'm actually pretty calm. Maybe my intuition was right. He says this is harassment. He denies knowing such a woman. Let's believe him. Actually, this Mr. It was later revealed this is the ex-fiancé's lover's name. On the day of the disappearance, it was also Ms. Hitomi Mashiyama. Yes, a young woman named Masuka called the workplace. According to her co-worker's testimony about how she handled the situation, at that time, she was talking as if she was arranging to meet someone while looking at the clock. And it seemed that she wasn't very close with the person on the other end of the call. The police investigation later revealed that the caller was Mr. XX, the same name seen earlier in the notebook. It was revealed this person was her ex-fiancé's lover. Given the situation so far, am I the only one who thinks that the former fiancé's lover might be holding some important clue about the disappearance? But strangely enough, no information or testimony exists about this lover being questioned by authorities. Why is that? Well, it's just a rumor, but it's said that this person's father is connected to organized crime. And there's speculation that some kind of pressure was put on the police investigation. For example, suppose the former fiancé said he needed to discuss something important. She was called out by her former fiancé, and they arranged to meet at a convenience store near her workplace. That day was the warmest day of the month, and 1 p.m. is the time when the temperature is at its highest. She left her coat and belongings, got out, and locked the car. At that moment, the perpetrator approached her, knocked her out, and took her away. Actually, there is something even more unnatural about this case. It's the behavior of her ex-fiancé after she disappeared. He had already let Ueno live there, even though his girlfriend had disappeared. He said this, "I think she disappeared of her own will. There's no reason for me to look for her." And then, about half a year after her disappearance, the person we've been talking about appeared. He reunited with his lover and married her. People online have pointed out how cold his attitude toward her was regarding this matter. There are whispers that this former fiancé might also know something about her disappearance. According to the notebook she left behind, he denied having a mistress, saying he didn't know any such woman and wasn't harassing anyone. Given the situation, it's natural to think their relationship continued. We can resolve this case by examining the relationship between the former fiancé and the mistress. There was speculation that the key was hidden, but regarding that, the police investigation status remains unknown. Now, finally, let me tell you about a certain strange incident that left an even stronger impression on this case. About a year after her disappearance, on January 4, 1995, a mysterious person called her family home. Here is the actual exchange.
Hello, Minnie.
Hello, yes.
It's your big sister. Yes, it's your big sister. Who is this? It's your big sister. Who is this? It's Hitomi.
Huh?
Did the family record this call? It's confirmed it came from a public phone at the same station. Who was on the other end of this call? They said they were Mr. Masuyama, but that voice was nothing like my daughter's. I could never forget her voice. There's no way I would forget it. The father insists that the voice didn't resemble hers at all. He says this because he could hear a unique accent, among other reasons. It's assumed to be a local woman in her 50s, but her identity and purpose are still shrouded in mystery. There's a saying the culprit returns to the crime scene, but what stood out to me was her family's condition. Did someone from the perpetrator's side call about this as well? The details of that remain unknown as of 2020. After hearing the story so far, what do you all think about this case? From the remaining information, the ex-fiancé and the mistress seem suspicious. However, we can't and don't want to assume they're the culprits without any evidence. However, we can't deny the possibility that these two are hiding some important information. The culprit returns to the scene. The culprit remembers the scene. The culprit is born from what they remember and returns to the scene. The culprit is at the scene. The culprit is at the scene. Maybe there was someone who benefited by returning. If we look beyond romantic motives and reconsider the reasons for the crime, we may find new clues we missed before. A special television program was created to gather information about the case. However, no valuable information has been found. Even so, her family is still searching for her to this day. Her father keeps 3 photos of his daughter in his wallet and always carries them with him. That's right. Later, her mother said in an interview that thoughts of her daughter prevent her from truly laughing or enjoying herself. She said it's always on her mind. It's been over 25 years since this incident. But for those left behind, this case is not over. I sincerely hope that the truth behind the incident will be revealed as soon as possible. Well then, that's all for this time. Thank you very much for watching. Building a happy newlywed life together, sharing each day, and understanding each other. A happy period, the first step in the joyful life of two people who, because of the depth of their love, have decided to spend their lives together. However, sometimes that depth of love can show itself in a completely different way. Over-involvement, jealousy, and possessiveness. Are you able to control your emotions well? Do you think you have them under control? But at some point, the dam in your heart might break. That's what I'm going to talk about now. Like the perpetrator in the Toyonaka City, Osaka newlywed couple wedding dress incident. On December 17, 2018 in Toyonaka City, Osaka Prefecture, the police received a report from the woman's relatives that they couldn't contact the married couple. The police immediately went to the apartment where the couple lived and opened the door. What they saw there was an electrical cord or something similar wrapped around the neck. A woman had already grown cold, and there was a blood-stained knife. Furthermore, there was a man, believed to be her husband, hanging by the neck in the bathroom. Both were rushed to the hospital, but unfortunately, the woman was confirmed dead, while the man had only minor injuries and was discharged from the hospital the next day on the 18th. What exactly happened to the two of them? The police immediately questioned the man to confirm the situation, and then this man started to say something unbelievable. He said, "I strangled my wife to death, but I don't know why I did it." The police took this statement into account. On December 18th of the same year, the police arrested this man on suspicion of murder. The person arrested was Moto, a teacher at a special needs support school living in Nishi-Izumigaoka, in the same city. The suspect, Tasso, was 28 and the victim was his wife, Riko Honda, who was 26. And then, through the subsequent investigation, it was found that the suspect, Honda, killed Riko. The reason becomes clear. That reason, it was the wedding dress. The wedding dress. But with only this, I doubt you'll understand. To put it correctly, it's the dress that Riko-san will wear at the wedding. When she tried on the wedding dress, the way she looked in it became an issue. Let's go back a bit in time, to about half a year before this incident. In June 2018, Honda and Riko met through a dating app, hit it off right away, and quickly started dating. Then, about a month before the incident in November, they registered their marriage, and the following year, they were planning to have a wedding ceremony overseas. Ever since they started dating, the two were always together, respecting each other and pouring all their love into one another. Whenever they went out, they would always hold hands or link arms, cherishing their time together. However, Riko said that from the very beginning of their relationship, she had a certain anxiety about Honda, but Riko is from the Ko tribe. She understands. She understands. She understands. It is known that Riko killed a member of the Riri tribe. It is known that Riko killed a member of the Riri tribe. It is understood that Riko harmed Riko's family. It became even more intense. I was told not to contact not only men, but also my friends. It has been found that Riko had been complaining like this to her mother before this incident occurred. When they were dating, the two of them got along really well. But after getting married, they would argue about Riko's friendships at least once a week. That's right. Then, in late November 2018, this was the day Ms. Riko tried on her wedding dress for the ceremony. When they arrived at the shop, Ms. Riko and the staff immediately began changing. And finally, Ms. Riko appeared before Motoda in her wedding dress. What do you think? Does it suit me? This starts a happy conversation between the two, but that feeling only lasted until now. The strongest emotion that Motoda, the suspect, felt first when he saw his wife in her wedding dress. It wasn't that she looked beautiful or cute, but rather that the dress was way too revealing. Completely unaware of that, Ms. Riko tried to upload a picture of herself in the dress to Instagram, but Motoda, the suspect, strongly stopped her, saying it was too revealing. He also took Riko's smartphone, and when she tried to post it, they fought. Eventually, the situation escalated and police had to intervene. After that, maybe thanks to the police mediation, the two finally made up and headed home, and nothing more happened that day. However, after that, in the end, Motoda's jealousy and possessiveness never improved, and finally, the day of the incident arrived. On December 16, 2018, it was over for the two of them. They got into another heated argument over taking away the smartphone. That's when their emotions finally exploded. The argument lasted for 3 hours. "I want a divorce. I wish you were dead. Then kill me. That way we can be apart. I want you to die, but if that happens, it would trouble the family. This kind of exchange became the trigger. According to Honda, Riko was the one who acted first. Riko took a kitchen knife from the kitchen, and after that, Motoda repeatedly hit Riko. As Riko kept getting beaten, she finally spoke up. "You told me to kill you." What a truly terrible man. Sorry, I made a mistake. After that, Motoda said that when Riko said those words, it broke down the feelings he had been holding back inside. Motoda grabbed the electric blanket cord that was nearby and continued to strangle Riko from behind. And when he came to his senses, Riko was already motionless. Seeing her like that, he realized the crime he had committed. The death of the wife he loved so much that it hurt. So much that he wanted to control her by his own hand. But after that, the actions Motoda took showed no sign of love for his wife at all. After that, Motoda fought with Riko to fake evidence of a struggle. He cut his neck and body with a kitchen knife and left a fake note claiming his wife had swung the knife. And then, without contacting an ambulance or the police, he headed to the bathroom. He attempted suicide, leaving his wife's body, whom he had killed, at the scene. It stayed that way. I wish the year-end party would end soon, so I could see you and cuddle at home. In court, the defense attorney read out their heartwarming exchange on LINE. It was from 2 days before the incident. Motoda, the defendant, spoke about the charges like this. "I thought Riko was going to kill me when she swung a knife at me. I'm not calling it self-defense, but that's what happened." The defense claimed it was self-defense against his wife's attack, but admitted it was excessive. They are seeking leniency on these grounds. However, those who objected were Ms. Riko's bereaved family, who stood in court under the victim participation system. They tearfully appealed, saying the man is lying, and demanded the original sentence. On November 13, 2019, after sentencing, Judge Motoda presided. Regarding the defendant's actions, the act of hitting and the act of strangling at a high level are clearly different in nature. It was determined that this did not constitute excessive self-defense. Furthermore, although the defendant was injured by his wife's attack, the circumstances leading up to it were not solely the wife's responsibility, and she was not at fault to the extent that she deserved to be killed. Regarding the cover-up after the crime, it was said that the defendant, out of selfish motives, degraded his wife's dignity. He said this and then took a break. A 10-year prison sentence was given instead of 12, and the trial ended in 6 weeks. Their short newlywed life came to an end in the worst possible way. He said with regret in the latter half, "I'm sorry I couldn't make you happy." No matter how much Motoda regrets it, his beloved wife will never come back. Riko being taken from her family forever can't be changed. People's emotions, to a greater or lesser extent, are influenced by their current situation. Emotions shift based on circumstances, physical condition, and others' words or actions. Our emotional ups and downs can be completely different from day to day. Isn't your emotional dam filling up? If it bursts, you'll reach your limit. Some people have no one to talk to. If that's the case, let's have a drink together. Of course, juice is fine too. If you have worries or thoughts, I'll listen as long as you need. I haven't used it much lately, but please direct message me on Twitter. Well, it's X now. That's all for today. Thank you for watching. Television shows closely follow police officers. Documentary specials are aired several times a year, and it seems their ratings are quite high. They show police cracking down on shoplifting, drug crimes, and drunk driving, portraying them as admirable and just. However, many crimes by police officers also happen nationwide every year. This time, I will talk about what is said to be the worst and most disgraceful scandal among police officer scandals. Sumiyoshi Ward police officer affair murder case. On January 24, 2015 in Higashi Sumiyoshi Ward, Osaka City, in a room of an apartment, Mitsuru Shirata, who was a social worker at the time, 23 years old, was found dead, and the police immediately began an investigation. On the 25th, a person was arrested for suspected murder. 26-year-old Takashi Mizu. He was Shirata's boyfriend and served as a senior police officer in the Abe Area Division. The cause of her death was strangulation with a belt, leading to asphyxiation. Just what happened that led to Mizu. Did the defendant kill her? They were lovers, just the two of them, but yes, their relationship was an affair. Now, here are the case details. Around 10 a.m. on January 24, 2015, the police received a call from Shirata-san's workplace. She usually arrives 45 minutes early, but she's still not here. They received the report, and about an hour after the call, police officers headed to the apartment building in Higashi Sumiyoshi Ward, Osaka City, where Shirata-san lived. They found her floating in the bathtub in that room. Shortly after she was found, her death was confirmed at the time of discovery. The front door was locked, and there were no signs of the room being disturbed. She was wearing a winter coat and pants. She was also wearing socks, dressed as if she was about to go outside. That's right. No visible injuries were found, and nothing in the room appeared unusual. However, upon closer examination, there were faint marks on her neck that looked like she had been strangled. Based on that, the police began investigating the case as a homicide. First, they started the investigation by looking into her social circle. That's when the suspect, Mizunuchi, came into the picture. It didn't take very long. However, the investigators were surprised. At the time, they didn't expect him to become the defendant. They only wanted to eliminate him as a suspect. They say the investigation was just to be sure, and Minucci was initially listed as a possible suspect as a precaution. At 6:53 p.m., they decided to speak with him to be sure. They brought Minucci to the prefectural police and questioned him about the situation. Minucci responded as follows: "I know Shirata-san, but I didn't know she was killed." Before the police told him it was a murder case, when he was informed that she had died, he said she was killed. Meanwhile, the prefectural police investigated the scene and the security of her apartment building. A suspicious man was seen on the security camera around 7:45 a.m. on the day of the incident. A man wearing a black hood and mask to hide his face visited her apartment and got into the elevator. Around 8:45 a.m., he came down to the ground floor using the emergency stairs. The man was recorded entering the apartment building and passing through the entrance. His jacket had changed from black to a light brown jumper. He entered the elevator earlier and looked like the man. Police believe they are the same person. He was described as a large young man, and since this matched Mizunuchi's appearance and the wanted notice, an uneasy atmosphere spread among investigators. It was discovered that he had gone out somewhere during the time the crime was committed. In order to rule out the possibility that he was the culprit, he was changed from a suspect to an important person of interest in this case. That was when his status changed. Then, at 7:08 a.m., on the 25th Mizunai, the defendant revised his statement admitting, "I did it." He admitted, "I strangled her with a belt and killed her." He was urgently arrested today on suspicion of murder. Going back to before this incident occurred, in May 2013, about a year earlier, defendant Mizunuchi and Ms. Shirata met in Miyagi Prefecture, far from Osaka. At the time, Mizunuchi was a university welfare student. The defendant was assisting recovery after the Great East Japan earthquake. He had been assigned to the Miyagi Prefectural Police since April of that year. The two met at an event held in Sendai City. They met at a matchmaking event, quickly connected, and soon began dating. That's right. However, by that fall, she felt he was always snowboarding. She started confiding in her friends, wondering if he had lost interest in her. He ignored her messages, often canceled dates, and did the same when Shirata-san's birthday came in December. Her anxiety only grew stronger. Though it was her birthday, he avoided her, skipped celebrating, and gave no gift. This made it hard for her to concentrate on her challenging studies. Despite concerns about love, she worked hard, earned her social worker qualification, and had lost her grandmother and mother to cancer. Her motivation to study came from her desire to help as many patients and their families as possible, based on her own experiences. In April 2014, Mizunai returned to the Osaka Prefectural Police after completing a one-year assignment in Miyagi and was assigned to Abe's department. Around the same time, Shirata began working as a social worker at a cancer hospital in Higashi Sumiyoshi Ward, Osaka City. After getting a job, he relocated to Osaka. Their relationship continued even in Osaka, but his cold attitude never improved, and they never met face to face. In June, the two of them finally reunited in Osaka. "I drank with my senior, got drunk, missed the last train, and going home seemed too much trouble." Mizuchi, the defendant, remembered her and showed up at her apartment uninvited. That's right. However, in the 6 months before the incident happened, the two of them only met 3 times. Why was he able to treat his own girlfriend so coldly? It's because he already had someone he truly loved. By August, he was already in a relationship with his real girlfriend, and unbelievably, he continued dating both of them at the same time, keeping this a secret from both women. He even went so far as to marry the woman he truly loved. However, he continued his relationship with Shirata-san even after that. Unaware he was married, she emailed him but got no reply for 23 days. She told close friends about her worries, saying he wouldn't share his address and used living with his parents as an excuse. According to Shirata's colleague, she became unable to tolerate the situation where they could hardly meet at the very least. She tried to break up with Mizunuchi 3 times, but he refused each time. He reportedly said, "You won't be able to break up with me anyway because you love me." On January 12, 2015, Shirata posted on Facebook, "When I saw the photo of him and his wife, I found out for the first time that he was married. I was so shocked that I couldn't even tell him that I had learned about his marriage." On January 13, she wrote on her Facebook, "I don't notice things that are inconvenient for me." She suggested she had pretended not to notice and knew he was married. She posted this, and then a week later, she wrote that he would have to face social punishment. On January 24th, the day of the incident, Mizunai, the defendant, realized this and went to her, but it resulted in an irreversible situation. After his arrest, Mizunai said that when he tried to end things, she threatened to expose their relationship to his wife and the police. So he lost his temper and acted. However, as a result of the investigation, looking at his movements on the day, circumstances suggesting premeditation of the crime have emerged. He went back to Abe's office right after the incident. From around 9:30 a.m. to 11 o'clock a.m., he was practicing kendo at the dojo. And then he committed the crime. That wasn't the belt he wore with his pants. It was something he had put in his bag beforehand, and he left it in the corner of the dojo. He tossed it in the trash, had lunch with colleagues, and went home. Given these circumstances, the idea that this was a premeditated crime, planned in advance, is gaining traction. And discarding the belt may be viewed as destroying evidence. Mizunai suggested it was a crime of passion during a breakup. But the defendant's statement still had suspicious points. And then the day arrived. On October 6, 2015, the Osaka District Court delivered the lay judge verdict. The presiding judge called it a malicious crime with strong intent to kill and gave Mizunuchi, the defendant, an 18-year prison sentence. Because he was a police officer, the court imposed a harsher sentence than usual for similar cases. Mizunuchi is still incarcerated. This case is what you would call a complicated breakup from an extramarital affair. It is quite different from a simple case. Mizunuchi did not tell Ms. Shirata that he got married to another woman while he was dating her. Even after she tried to end things when it was discovered, he refused. In the end, when things became inconvenient for him, he resorted to force. This is a selfish and despicable crime of the worst kind. And what's more, he was involved with 6 other women besides his wife and Ms. Shirata. Unfortunately, there are quite a few people like defendant Minucci who repeatedly cheat and have affairs. However, when a police officer has an affair, it damages trust in the entire force. So rules exist, and warnings or reprimands may lead to disciplinary action. A television documentary about police officers. Both are just partial aspects of police officers. It's misguided to assume officers are always morally right because of their job, or to use this case to claim, "That's why the police are no good." Whether he's a police officer or not, I feel a strong sense of anger toward Mizunai, the defendant. Even if we restrain ourselves now, she has no future. I sincerely pray for the soul of Ms. Hikaru Shirata. That's all for today. Thank you for watching. Do you ever shop online? You can buy what you want without leaving your house or talking to store clerks, especially without having to deal with sales talk from the staff. You can really take your time to carefully choose what you want without anyone bothering you. By the way, I'm not good at it either. Online shops may seem convenient at first glance, but behind the scenes, you can sometimes see the complicated relationships and financial issues among the owners. Was it a relationship problem? Or was it about money? This time, I'll talk about a case where the owner of an online shop met a tragic end. In this case, the suspect was arrested and sentenced. 20. At the end of June 2022, the convict's legal team filed a new appeal. In other words, there is suspicion that a wrongful conviction may have occurred. Online shop owner's murder in Suzuka City, Mie Prefecture. Around 4 p.m. on November 12, 2012 in Suzuka City. Mr. Tsujimoto, who lived alone in a separate building of an ordinary house and ran an online shop. At 38, he told his mother he was leaving for work and drove off. He came home around 1 a.m. on the 13th and is believed to have been taking a bath in the main house around 2 a.m. That evening, when his parents in the main house tried to contact him, he didn't respond. Around 5:50 p.m., unable to reach him, his parents went to the detached room where Mr. Tsuji was staying. They found him slumped over the table as if sleeping, but quickly sensed something was wrong. Blood was flowing from the back of his head, and he wasn't moving at all. When they looked up at the ceiling, they saw blood splatters on it. His parents called the police, who soon confirmed his death and began investigating. Mr. Tsuji's estimated time of death was around 11 a.m. on the 13th when he was found. Given the scene, it was assumed the perpetrator was also covered in blood. Why was Mr. Tsuji targeted? It was because of the business he was running. It is believed that the online shop may be involved. In fact, Mr. Tsuji was running the online shop by himself. That wasn't true. He was co-managing it with someone. That person lived in Tsushima City, Aichi Prefecture, and was running an information technology company. Mr. A.G. Kato, who was 34 then, became a suspect because of this case. At about 10:30 a.m., Mr. Kato went to Mr. Tsuji's house to urge him to repay the loan. He went to his house. He went to his house. He went to his house. Go to his house. Go to his house. Go to his house. 4 days after the incident, on November 17, 2012, Mr. Kato was arrested. However, from the time of his arrest, Mr. Kato consistently denied the charges and claimed his innocence. However, the fact that the key to Mr. Tsuji's house was found in the car and the incident itself, he had a female acquaintance get rid of his clothes the next day. And there was also a financial dispute with Mr. Tsuji. It was also found that he had enough motive for the crime, like his company's management declining as a result. From the incident, about 3 years later, on July 24, 2015, Mr. Kato was sentenced to 17 years in prison at the Tsu District Court. Mr. Kato appealed the verdict that day. In 2016, the Nagoya High Court dismissed the appeal, and in 2018, the Supreme Court rejected it. The 17-year prison sentence was finalized, and the person who killed Mr. Tsuji was arrested. The case may appear closed, but there are still several puzzling aspects to this incident. There are doubts about Mr. Kato being the culprit. These are the puzzling aspects, and we will examine each of them in detail. First, the main point concerns the blood reaction and the weapon. Mr. Tsuji was found, even though the scene was so gruesome that blood splattered onto the ceiling. There was no blood reaction found on Mr. Kato or on the seats of Mr. Kato's car. Because Mr. Kato said he brought it to Ms. Tsuji's house, it was identified as the murder weapon. It's a monkey wrench, but actually, as of today in July 2022, this monkey wrench has not been found. In other words, it's not certain that the monkey wrench is the murder weapon in this case. The second puzzling point is the key to Ms. Tsuji's house, considered crucial evidence. Although found in Mr. Kato's car, no fingerprints of his were detected on it. Also, if he had committed the murder, finding the key would be evidence. Even so, would he really go out of his way to leave the key inside the car? There's also the question of why he didn't choose to throw it away somewhere. And the third puzzling point is about the LINE records and how they were operated. In fact, it's not just the evidence I mentioned earlier in this case. Questions about its operation are also increasing, and unless this mystery is solved, it is considered premature to conclude that this case was committed by Mr. Kato. The mystery is that there are LINE records from Ms. Tsuji even after the time she is said to have passed away. Among the messages that arrived on Ms. Tsuji's smartphone, one arrived at 11:34 a.m. on the day of the incident. It has been revealed that the message was marked as read. Mr. Tsuji is believed to have died around 11 a.m., But there is a discrepancy in the timing. If Mr. Tsuji himself opened this message, it is believed that he was killed after 11:34 a.m., and at that time, Mr. Kato was actually driving on the highway. Mr. Tsuji's smartphone was found at his home. Because of this, Mr. Kato has an alibi and says he couldn't have committed the crime. The police claimed the officer handling the smartphone accidentally marked the message as read. However, the investigating officer's name and report instructions were not provided. And finally, the fourth puzzling point is the presence of cigarettes of a different brand and footprints. In fact, at the scene, a brand of cigarettes different from what Tsuji-san usually smoked was found. But regarding that, no DNA analysis was done, and it was left at the scene. The defense also noted the mysterious footprints remain unexamined. Thank you for watching this video. Please watch the footage. Please watch the footage. Thank you for watching the footage. Please watch this footage. Thank you for watching the footage. Thank you for watching the footage. Thank you for watching this 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 video. Thank you for watching this video. Thank you for watching this video. Although the videos were coming together, the important Mr. Otaku was missing. As for him, he had not yet been found. When the program requested information on this case, the perpetrators also watched the broadcast. And then, fearing the case would be discovered, they immediately took action. They went to the place where they had dumped him. If he died from the assault, his body would be there. But no matter how much they searched, they couldn't find his body. The Chiba Prefectural Police also, based on the suspect's statements, they put all their efforts into the investigation to find Mr. Ezawa. But because the suspect's memories were vague, they were never able to find Mr. Ezawa. Although the body was never found, they made a comprehensive judgment based on the situation and suspect's statements. It was concluded this case was a murder. So on April 6, 2005, the assault charges were upgraded to murder. The suspects were rearrested and indicted. And then, on May 23, 2006, after the trial, the Chiba District Court handed down a guilty verdict to the two. Mr. Uchiyama was sentenced to 13 years in prison, and Mr. Nakayama was sentenced to 10 years in prison. 6 years had passed since the incident occurred. Regarding this case, the Chiba Prefectural Police and others, investigators admitted the television program's information was key to solving the case. Many people praised the achievements of the program. There's no doubt that the criminal was identified and arrested. Since Mr. Ezawa himself hasn't been found, we can't truly say the case has been solved. The bereaved family still hopes for his safety and a future reunion. Everyone has their own thoughts about this case. But don't you think you could feel the great power that the media, including television, holds? In fact, the woman who provided eyewitness information in this case decided to come forward after seeing the appeal made on the program. However, on the other hand, while the achievements of the program were praised, there were also voices questioning why there had been no progress in the case for 5 years. They stated that the information provided by the program led to the resolution of the case. What happened to the investigation over the last 5 years? How did a private television show find more valuable information than the police? What occurred before the case was on the program? It has not been made clear whether an investigation was actually conducted. Therefore, it is unknown whether there was any negligence or not. But is it really okay to simply treat this as a heartwarming story where the case was solved thanks to the television program? The truth still hasn't been found. Regarding the search for Ezawa-san, what is the current situation? Is the search still ongoing? I think that's the most important thing. This case shows the great power that television had at the time. On the other hand, it may have given us an opportunity to think about the way investigative agencies should operate. Reduce the number of people suffering daily because they don't know where their loved ones are. Is there anything that can be done? What do you all think? Lastly, to those who were victimized in this case, I sincerely hope that Shigeo Ezawa will be found as soon as possible. That's all for today. Thank you for watching. Every time a tragic incident occurs, the defendants claim their innocence. While some of their testimonies clearly feel like lies, there are also those who thoroughly investigate the case. And when you think about it, there are actually many cases where you can't say for sure that they're guilty. The prosecution and the defense present evidence that favors their own side. The process determines the defendant's guilt. How would you judge the case I'm going to introduce today? The Hirano mother and child murder case, which was called an exceptionally difficult case. It happened around 9:40 p.m. on April 14, 2002. A fire suddenly broke out at an apartment in Hirano Ward, Osaka City. The fire was quickly extinguished, but to everyone's shock, Mayumi Mori, who lived in that room at the time, 28-year-old Mayumi Mori was found strangled to death with a dog leash used for walking. And her 1-year-old son was also found drowned in the bathtub. Their pet dog was also found killed. They were killed between 3 o'clock and 5 o'clock p.m. The suspect likely set fire to clothes, newspapers, and other items to destroy evidence, and then escaped. The police immediately began investigating the case as a murder, and about half a year after the incident, in November of the same year, they finally arrested the suspect. The person arrested was Mr. Mori's mother's remarried partner, M, who was 45 years old at the time and working as a prison officer. The suspect, it seemed like the case was closed with the arrest. This case is considered exceptionally difficult because it didn't stop there. In fact, this case, after that, the trial continued for an astonishing 15 years. Only one point was disputed. Did M kill Mayumi-san and her son or not? Now, here are the details of the case. As mentioned earlier, the person arrested as the suspect in this case was M, who is the victim, Mori-san's brother-in-law. At the time, he was a prison officer. So the fact that a prison officer committed murder became a big topic. What led to M's arrest? It was that Mr. and Mrs. Mori became joint guarantors for M's death, even though they had done that for him. After that, it was discovered that Mr. and Mrs. Mori had disappeared, and that M had been interfering in their lives and sometimes even sending them threatening emails. And from the contents of those emails, you can see M's feelings toward Mayumi. Romantic feelings played a role here. M's emotions were ignored, and he was also made a joint guarantor for a loan. Although he became a guarantor, he couldn't reach out anymore and felt angry about it. That's why it was thought that M committed the crime. Also, several people saw M's car near Mr. Mori's apartment around the time of the crime. Testimonies exist, and the crime is believed to have occurred. At that time, M had turned off his cell phone. Also at that time, M had promised to pick up his wife. Nevertheless, he ended up not picking her up, which is puzzling. It was also revealed that Minoru was involved, but actually, the first person suspected when this incident occurred was Mr. Mori's husband. However, on the day of the incident, the husband was actually meeting with his mistress. This was made clear by footage from a security camera. The husband was cleared of suspicion due to his alibi. Because of that, a new investigation was launched. And then, about 6 months after the incident, on November 16th, the police arrested MU on suspicion of murder, and then re-arrested him on December 8th on suspicion of arson of a building, and then they decided to prosecute him. However, actually, this prosecution, the police had a major weakness. That was the fact that there was no direct evidence linking M to the crime. However, in the midst of this, the prosecution brought up the previously mentioned mysterious points and added these issues as well. They claimed this was M's crime and demanded the death penalty. 1. On the stairs of Mr. Mori's apartment building. 1. Cigarette butts were found with M's saliva and DNA type matching. 2. There were eyewitness reports of M himself during the time of the crime. In response, M's defense team completely denied all the allegations and claimed his innocence. 1. M has never visited Mr. Mori's apartment and doesn't even know the address. 2. M gave Mr. Mori a portable ashtray, but cigarette butts remained inside. He tossed the cigarette butts in the apartment's ashtray. As a fact, there are 3 possible time frames for the crime. He parked near Mr. Mori's apartment, but actually, it was because he was looking for Mr. Mori, and he didn't know that Mr. Mori lived in that apartment, nor did he go to that apartment. In other words, to summarize the defense's claim, M had been looking for Mr. Mori and his wife for some time because of the debt. It just so happened that he was searching around the apartment when the incident occurred. In August 2005, about 3 years after the incident, it was the day of the latter half of the trial. The Osaka District Court completely rejected the defense's claims. The court sentenced M to life imprisonment. However, both the defense and the prosecution, which had sought the death penalty, appealed the verdict. And then, on December 15, 2006, the Osaka High Court judged that M's claim of innocence showed no sign of remorse and followed the prosecution's request. By sentencing M to death, it confirmed that the crime was committed by M. The relationship between M and Mr. Mori was judged solely on sexual history and circumstantial evidence, without decisive proof. Of course, the defense could not accept this verdict and naturally filed an appeal. And from here, this case takes an unexpected turn. It was about 4 years after the appellate court's decision. On April 27, 2010, the Supreme Court overturned the appellate court's decision, stating that there were still doubts about factual errors that had not been fully examined, which was an extremely rare move. They decided to remand the case for further proceedings. This remand for further proceedings. In 78 years since the war, this has only occurred 7 times, and it's the first in 21 years. They also remanded the case for further proceedings. In the trial, all of the defendants were later acquitted on appeal. In other words, the case proceeded without any decisive evidence. Until then, the prosecution had only physical evidence. That was found on the apartment building stairs. The saliva on the cigarette butts in the ashtray matched M. When the Supreme Court ordered a retrial, they said if anything in the apartment's ashtray matched Mayumi's DNA, it meant the portable ashtray's contents were dumped there. Cigarette butts found on the day of the incident may be related. Their discoloration showed they were discarded long ago. He pointed out the possibility and requested that all the cigarette butts be examined, but here a major mistake by the prosecution was discovered. Out of the 72 cigarette butts that were said to be in the ashtray, all but 1 had been discarded. As a result, analyzing the cigarette butts became impossible, and it was discovered this had been concealed. This would have a significant impact on the later trial. In order to convict M, the prosecution was required to provide a high level of proof. And then, on October 20, 2011, the day of the first retrial, things were different from before. The prosecution sought the death penalty. The defense maintained M's innocence. Amid the dispute, M chose to remain silent. The prosecution cited something found on M as circumstantial evidence that M visited Mr. Mori's apartment. Dog hair, the dog that Mr. Mori owned. Crime, the perpetrator of the crime. The perpetrator of the sin. The perpetrator of the crime and sin. That's not the case, and new evidence was submitted, such as the footprints at the scene not matching M's and so on. They claimed that M was not the perpetrator of this case, and that the real culprit was someone else. Then, on March 15, 2012, the day of the retrial verdict regarding the prosecution's claim about the matching doghouse. It turned out that the dog owned by Mr. Mori and his wife had actually been temporarily entrusted to Mr. Mori's younger brother, so it could not be proven that someone had entered the Mori residence. Also, the cigarette smoking experiment was dismissed as unscientific, and finally, M was found not guilty. The police immediately appealed, and in 2016, the case became tangled in complications and chaos. The trace evidence was examined. A legal scholar appeared in court as a witness in this case and testified as follows. It matches with the victim and the madness. No DNA type was detected, and a DNA type believed to belong to another person was found. And later, on August 2nd of the same year, it was revealed that the prosecution's analysis also did not detect a DNA type matching M. Then came the fateful day, March 2nd, 2017. The main text dismisses the case. The Osaka High Court rejected the prosecution's claims. The not guilty verdict was upheld, and the prosecution stopped appealing. The acquittal was confirmed. He was reinstated as a prison officer at age 59. He lost so much time due to the long trial, but he finally won his acquittal and was even reinstated. However, the long years lost can never be regained. Looking at the course of this case, I can't shake the impression that the police and prosecutors forced a story from the start to make Mr. M the culprit. It's true that Mr. M's actions at the time of the incident were puzzling, but those are not enough to serve as evidence of the crime. Later, Mr. M spoke about the interrogation at that time in this way. I was interrogated harshly by 3 detectives in charge. They took me to caves, used violence, and even put a nylon bag over my head until I lost consciousness from lack of oxygen. It was so unbearable that I was driven to the point of attempting suicide by taking sleeping pills. I sued Osaka Prefecture for 5 million yen in compensation. I filed a lawsuit seeking compensation, but my claim was not accepted, and I ended up losing the case. What is the point of the justice system? After the not guilty verdict for M was decided, it was Mayumi's mother, the victim, who spoke these words. There are many mysteries, and the trial kept changing direction. There were people who were tossed around by all of this, and while you could certainly call it a complicated case, there's one thing we must not forget: the essence of this case. The person believed to be the culprit has not been caught. I feel deep pain for the anger and frustration of the bereaved family, but as of now, the only thing that the police investigation has revealed about the cause of death is that the perpetrator is male. More than 21 years have passed since this incident occurred. This case is slowly fading from memory. I would like to sincerely pray for the souls of Mayumi Mori and her child. I just hope the information comes together and the real culprit is arrested soon. Well, that's all for this time. Thank you for watching. When researching heinous crimes involving both criminal judgments, this phrase often comes up. Law requires dual sentencing judgment. It refers to the court's decision on the type and extent of punishment within the legal range, formally called determination of both types of punishment. The decision of whether to grant a suspended sentence or impose an actual prison sentence, which is often discussed, is also included in this. Killing 3 or more people results in the death penalty. This standard also helps determine types of punishment. In determining the type of punishment, particular emphasis is placed on the maliciousness of the method and manner of the crime, the motive for the crime, and the seriousness of the consequences. However, in reality, various other factors are also considered, such as the suspect's attitude, whether they show remorse, the feelings of the victim's families regarding punishment, and the social impact. The type of punishment is determined based on these criteria. Because there are so many factors to consider in determining the punishment, it is extremely difficult, and a unified opinion is not always reached in judicial settings. Among these, a frequently raised issue is when a case that was once deemed appropriate for the death penalty is overturned in a higher court. resulting in a sentence of life imprisonment instead. We will discuss a case where a young girl was kidnapped and killed by a middle-aged man. She was kidnapped, murdered, and her body abandoned in a heartless crime. It was seen as a highly malicious, selfish crime with major societal impact. However, it is difficult to determine the appropriate sentence to be imposed as punishment for both crimes. The case was thoroughly contested, including the defendant's psychiatric evaluation. I want to discuss a particular incident, the Kobe Nagata Ward Matsui girl murder case, on September 11, 2014 in Nagata Ward, Kobe City. At the time, Ai-chan, a first grader who was 6 years old, went missing. Ai-chan's mother filed a missing person report at the Nagata police station. The next day, the 12th, a photo believed to show Ai-chan's backpack was included. The Hyogo Prefectural Police began a public investigation. 4 days later, on the 16th, someone was seen walking behind Ai-chan. A suspicious man was caught on a security camera, and investigators visited his home to conduct a voluntary search. On the 23rd of that month, something was discovered in a wooded area. Fran had moved beyond the plastic bag. Fragments of Ai-chan's body and cigarette butts. Furthermore, a medical card with that man's name was found. The man's name was Yasushiro Kimi. He was 47 at the time. A plastic bag was found. He was a person who lived just a few meters away from the grove. On the 24th, the prefectural police established an investigation headquarters. On this day, investigators found Kim, the suspect, trying to head toward the grove while drunk. They stopped him, asked him to come with them, and then he was found. When they conducted a DNA test on the cigarette butt, it matched Kim, the suspect. Because of that, the police arrested him on suspicion of abandoning a body. Also, 2 days later on the 26th, during a search of Kim's home, Ai-chan's backpack was found. Then, about 2 weeks later, on October 14th, the police re-arrested Kim on suspicion of murder. On the 21st, he denied the crime, and on the 31st, he was placed under psychiatric evaluation. The Kobe District Public Prosecutor's Office found him criminally responsible, and the case continued into the next year. On January 30th, 2015, he was indicted for murder and kidnapping for sexual exploitation. Then, about a year later, on March 7, 2016, the first trial of this case began at the Kobe District Court. And on that day, the Kobe District Court held the trial with a lay judge panel. He made the young girl the object of his sexual desire, took her life, and treated her body with disrespect. It was judged to be an extremely malicious crime. He will be sentenced to death as requested by the prosecution. In response, the defense immediately filed an appeal. It was held at the Osaka High Court on March 10, 2017. At the appeal trial, the original verdict was overturned, and instead, a life imprisonment sentence was handed down. Of course, I couldn't accept it. The prosecution appealed to the Supreme Court, but on July 3, 2019, the Supreme Court dismissed this appeal, and the life imprisonment sentence was finalized. That is the outline of this case. In this case, the suspect's medical certificate was found at the scene, and it was discovered at the scene. The DNA on the cigarette matched his. Also, the way the evidence was found was just too convenient. There were even rumors of a false accusation. But Ai-chan's backpack was found at his home, and since he hasn't claimed innocence, the possibility of a false accusation is considered low. As you all know, life imprisonment is the heaviest sentence other than the death penalty. But after years in prison, yes. Huh? You mean returning to society is possible? Life imprisonment and the death penalty are completely different, like night and day. That's why this change in sentencing judgment is extremely significant. So then, why? Why was this change in sentencing judgment made in this case? To understand that, let's go over the details of the incident. Now, let's get into the details of the incident. First, about the convict who was arrested. He was a member of a crime syndicate. He had a past like that and was living on welfare. In high school, he was considered serious and quiet until the incident. At that time, he would drink alcohol during the day, shout loudly on the street, hang out at acquaintances' apartment complexes, and make noise from daytime until late at night. He often got into trouble with the neighbors because of this. According to the first trial verdict, he approached Ai-chan, a stranger, and asked her to model for his painting. He invited her to his home under the guise of selling a story, but feared being discovered. He decided to kill her, wrapped a vinyl rope around Ai-chan's neck, and tightened it strongly, then stabbed her with a kitchen knife more than 4 times. Did he kill her like that? Then he kept doing things that were truly tragic. The details are so terrible that I will refrain from explaining them. In the end, the mutilated body was placed in several plastic bags and taken to places like the Zoki forest, where it was later discovered. At first, after his arrest, he remained silent about the crime, but about a month after being taken into custody, he confessed to it. He said the reason was that he had come to terms with his feelings. After his confession, a psychiatric evaluation was conducted. Mr. Gakun, the inmate, developed an alcohol addiction. It was noted that although he had diminished capacity from drinking at the time, he still committed the crime voluntarily and intentionally. Although his psychological test scores are borderline between normal and intellectual disability, his level is normal, and he was found responsible for his actions. Also, he has a criminal record in the past for offenses caused by alcohol consumption. That was also seen as a disadvantage for him. From the beginning, his position was to admit to the charges of murder and destruction, but to deny any lewd intent or that the crime was premeditated. Therefore, in court, the facts regarding the murder and destruction were not disputed. The main points of contention were whether there was a lewd intent from the beginning and whether the crime was premeditated, which were both considered in determining the sentence. Regarding whether there was a lewd intent or not, at the first trial he admitted kidnapping her for lewd reasons. He said, "I don't remember, but there is no mistake about the other facts." He initially denied lewd intentions, but at trial admitted he was interested in the girl's body and wanted to kill her to touch her. He stated that while drinking, he started to feel like doing something mischievous. He lured the victim to his house and drank alcohol with her. He said his lewd intentions started while they were drinking together. However, the first trial found his claim that these intentions began only after they were alone at his house unnatural, concluding he had lured her in. It was found he had lewd intentions from the start. Since the timing of when the intention arose is an important point of contention in determining the sentence, he claimed that his lewd intentions only arose at his home in order to receive a lighter sentence. However, that argument was rejected in both the first and second trials. At this point, the only remaining objective issue was determining the sentence. In the first trial, it was determined that this was an extremely malicious crime, with a particularly selfish motive for the killing and a high degree of brutality in the act. Your responsibility as the convict is serious, and regardless of premeditation, your actions showed clear disregard for human life. It was stated that if such a blatant disregard for life is evident, the death penalty may be chosen even if there is only one murder victim, and thus the death sentence was handed down. After that, in the second trial, the High Court basically supported the first trial's verdict and dismissed the appeal. Almost all of the defense's arguments were rejected, but only the issue of whether both sentences were unjust was reconsidered. According to the second trial verdict and the Supreme Court's decision to dismiss the appeal, the motive was selfish, and the crime was brutal. Regarding the nature of the crime, the court evaluated it in a way that was unfavorable to the defendant. It was determined that there was no evidence of premeditation in the killing. In fact, it should have been regarded more seriously. And when compared with precedents of similar crimes, although the disregard for life is clear, it cannot be said to be remarkably or conspicuously so. As a result, this was the basis for the sentencing decision. The sentence was changed from the death penalty in the first trial to life imprisonment. In the second trial, the case was reconsidered. Regarding sentencing decisions, the court's precedent-based approach plays a significant role, especially in cases where similar incidents have previously been tried. When there is a precedent, the principle is that the court is bound by it. In this case, the sentencing decision was also considered in light of precedents from similar past cases. If we look at this case from an investment perspective, it was motivated by sexual purposes or intentions. It should be noted that one victim was killed, but there was no evidence of premeditation in the murder, and there was also no accompanying sexual assault. This is based on recent precedents in which the death penalty has not been chosen for similar cases that do not involve particularly grave malicious intent. In the second trial, the decision was made to overturn the death sentence from the first trial. As I mentioned earlier, as the inmate previously committed crimes besides assault, like fraud or theft. He had served 5 sentences for offenses such as extortion and was imprisoned until May 2013. That was his past. However, there were no offenses similar to this case. As for his record of injury by forcible distortion, He once received a suspended sentence, so I don't think it was seen as a serious offense or that he had no prior record. This perspective is also clearly stated in the written judgment. As stated, this case does not acknowledge any premeditation in the killing. It is a judgment, and it is also by the defendant. Even if we include the question of whether violating life is good or not, it is limited to only this one instance in this case. After reconsidering the punishment, it was decided that life imprisonment, not the death penalty, was appropriate. This point is clearly stated in the second trial's verdict and the decision to dismiss the appeal. Even if we consider whether harming life is good, I feel an endless sense of discomfort with the word only in only once. Making a final judgment on punishment is difficult because it depends on how people feel about the incident, but it seems like it could change. It's a very ambiguous matter. However, what do you all think about the verdict in this case? The convict in question is completely innocent, selling girls. He kidnapped her for selfish reasons, killed her to protect himself and satisfy his desires, stole her future, and desecrated her dignity by mutilating her body after death. There was only one act of taking a life, even considering everything. For example, I can understand cases where someone unintentionally takes a life, such as in a traffic accident. But using such words in this case makes me feel indignant. After the Supreme Court dismissed the appeal, the bereaved family discussed you, the convict, and their daughter's ordeal. I don't think you understand the pain, suffering, fear, despair, and the grief of the bereaved family. They concluded there was no remorse, willingness to make amends, or expression of your feelings during the trial. And regarding the court's decision, they questioned the point of having a lay judge trial if the court only values precedent and does not truly understand or face the weight of a single life. Their claim is understandable from the bereaved family's perspective, having lost their irreplaceable daughter so suddenly. While considering the bereaved family's feelings about punishment, it's also vital to ensure fairness in sentencing, promote justice, and support the offender's reintegration into society. This is also the judiciary's role and a form of social justice upheld in Japan. That's why I feel that deciding between the two types of punishment is truly difficult. There are the defendant's side and the bereaved family's side. No matter the side, we never know when we could be in the same situation. Isn't the existence of the death penalty something we all must seriously consider? I sincerely pray for Ai-san, who lost her life in this case. Well then, that's all for this time. Thank you very much for watching. Falsely accused and judged with fake evidence. Overturning a false conviction in Japanese courts is difficult, as they reportedly have a 99.9% conviction rate for wrongful accusations. If you're framed as the culprit in a major case where the death penalty is possible and tortured as a result, if your confession obtained as evidence is used to try you in court, just thinking about it is terrifying. However, about 60 years ago, such an incident actually happened. Moreover, a police officer known as Detective May, who was credited with solving many cases, was involved, and numerous cases were closed as solved while actually being false accusations. This time, it's the story of a man who, despite being called Detective May, created numerous false accusations. Gorinrin Masao, from Shizuoka Prefecture, was a detective at the current Iwata police station investigating crimes. What made him famous was solving the Hamamatsu serial murder case that occurred from August 1941 to August 1942. This case was a brutal incident in which 10 people were killed and 7 were seriously injured over the course of about a year. The perpetrator was arrested in October 1942. The perpetrator's profile was considered early, but the case was solved only after he joined the investigation team. He was awarded a commendation for his investigative achievements by the Attorney General and became known as Detective May, who solved a heinous crime. After this case, he solved many more and was commended over 500 times, truly living up to the name Detective Mai. However, once he decided someone was guilty, he arrested innocent people, tortured confessions, fabricated evidence, and caused wrongful convictions. Because of this, his reputation as a brilliant detective quickly turned, and he became infamous as the king of torture. The Hamamatsu serial murders began before the Pacific War, continued during naval battles, and occurred throughout the war. As I mentioned earlier, 10 people lost their lives. Despite being a major incident, crime reporting was limited in wartime Japan. so few people knew about the case. In August 1941, two young geisha sleeping at a geisha house in Hamamatsu were repeatedly stabbed and killed. When the madam awoke, one was already dead and the other critically injured. The police rushed to the scene, set up a temporary headquarters at a nearby police box, and began investigating immediately. 2 days later, a child from a certain restaurant rushed to the nearby police box. The child told the police that his mother was being attacked by a thug. When the police arrived at the scene, they found it was the boy's mother, a woman employed as a maid, and 3 men had been stabbed in the chest and killed. Police issued an emergency alert, and the Prefectural Criminal Division sent an inspector. Also, the doctor from Nagoya and 3 surveillance staff are supporting and collecting evidence at the scene. As a result, common points between these two incidents emerged. First, the perpetrator entered through the bathroom window, and there were no signs of the room being searched. The wounds show the same weapon was used, and the murders were likely committed similarly. Despite the well-lit room, there's no sign the perpetrator wore a mask. All the victims were lower-class people. Witnesses heard the victim scream, but no one heard the perpetrator. Before these two incidents, there was also an assault and injury case involving geishas 3 years ago. 3 years ago, in August 1938, someone broke into the geisha house, entered through a second-floor window, went downstairs, and slept with a girl. He attacked the mistress with a kitchen knife, causing life-threatening injuries. The culprit went up to the second floor and tried to assault the geisha, but when she screamed, he struck her on the back, knocked her unconscious, and then fled. 3 years later, there were still no leads in the Musashiya incident, and the investigation had stalled. Headquarters noted that this and the 2 earlier cases shared the same silent method. They concluded the cases were related since the crimes happened in summer, and again considered if one person committed all 3. Still, the investigation was difficult. During this time, something interesting was discovered. While investigating the Musashiya incident, another incident occurred. 2 nights before, someone tried to enter the movie theater without a ticket. A boy was handed over to the police by the receptionist, but it was recorded that this boy had a ticket. They brought the boy to headquarters and questioned him, but since he was hearing impaired and nonverbal, attempts to communicate through writing and gestures yielded no useful information. At that time, he was released after about an hour. 5 days after questioning this boy, the 3rd incident occurred. A violent intruder broke into a farming family's home while members slept separately, repeatedly attacking the 4th son. He stabbed and killed him, then went to the next room where his wife slept. He seriously injured the husband and wife, then stabbed their 3rd daughter in the chest when she jumped up in shock and fled. The 2 grandchildren sleeping at the scene and the 6th son upstairs were unharmed. But this 6th son is the boy who was questioned earlier. At first, this person was involved. Later, since it seemed unlikely someone with a hearing impairment could commit the crime, the boy was not considered a suspect. In the 9 months since the first incident, the police mobilized about 7,200 investigators for the case. A year after the incident, strict security was implemented in August, but incidents persisted. In August 1942, the perpetrator entered a farmhouse and killed 4 people. The victims were stabbed to death with a knife. The police immediately conducted an on-site investigation. As a result, 3 blades were found lying on top of the victims' futons. It was found the blades belonged to the victims, used in self-defense, and some may have belonged to the perpetrator. A piece of cloth and a black painted hat chin strap were found. The discovery of these foreign objects, which had not been found in previous cases, was significant. The investigation advanced significantly. Later, an individual confessed, saying, "I'm the one who did it." Authorities questioned him further and collected his belongings. He was wearing them. The pattern on the soles of his canvas shoes matched perfectly with the footprints left at the scene of the second incident. As a result, the person was taken to Hamamatsu police station and later confessed to all crimes. That person was a boy with a hearing impairment. Later, a psychiatric evaluation was conducted during the trial. The psychiatric evaluation, though concluding criminal responsibility would be hard to establish, was later rejected. Under the criminal law, people with hearing impairments were initially subject to the original sentence, but this was later denied. He issued the death sentence in the higher court. The sentence was finalized in June 1944 and carried out in July the next year. Returning to the main topic, The person who did the most to solve these heinous crimes was. One of them was Kurebayashi Asu himself. Using this as a turning point, he solved many more cases afterward and was commended over 500 times. He gained fame as a brilliant detective, but that reputation was built and solidified on lies. After that, he only cared about catching the culprit in any case, no matter what. He acted in ways that made people think that, doing whatever it took to get a confession. He used brutal interrogations to solve cases. In other words, torture. A boy who was accused of a certain crime was tortured and forced to make a false confession. He insisted that he had nothing to do with the case. Although he was once sentenced to death, he was later found not guilty. This is because torture was found during interrogations in several cases investigated by Wu Lin and others, with defendants in each case claiming innocence. And these things were brought to light. He was condemned by the public as the torture king of the Showa era and fell from the glory of Myokeiji. He played a key role in solving the Hamamatsu serial murder case, which involved torture. There was no forced confession or fabricated evidence. Scientific analysis used the evidence found. So, the perpetrator was identified. In that regard, for this case, since Wu Lin conducted the investigation properly as a detective and was able to arrest the perpetrator, it is true that he was called Ming-Ching Temple. However, because of that, the case had to be solved. There's no doubt that his sense of duty and his own beliefs and the conviction that he was right only became stronger. And then there is a case known as the Hakamada incident, which is famous as a wrongful conviction. The detective in charge of this case is said to have been influenced by him. Those who commit crimes should be punished appropriately. However, only when there is definite evidence that a crime has been committed can someone be identified as the culprit. It's unacceptable to label someone a culprit based on personal judgment, as Golan did, and then force a confession through torture or fabricate evidence to frame them. All the false accusation cases he was involved with were later proven wrongful convictions. But those accused lost nearly 10 years of freedom. If not for the sloppy investigation, they could have lived normal lives. Even if they're proven innocent, society doesn't see them as ordinary people. False accusations that steal years and a person's honor, and the torture and fabricated evidence that laid the foundation for those false accusations. We must ensure this never happens again. That's all for today. Thank you for watching.